Hey there, this is Chris, and this, if you didn't know already, is the Rheology Podcast. This specific series in the podcast focuses on what people are thinking and saying when it comes to God, Jesus, and Christianity. There can be a lot of confusion surrounding those topics. We're here to help sort through that confusion in what we call So They Say. Today, along with Tyler and Scott, we'll sort through the idea that all Christians are hypocrites. So welcome back. This is episode 9. Hello, friends. How are you doing today?
Christopher, how's it going, man?
It's good.
Yeah?
Yeah, great.
Cool.
I think maybe this is Tyler's thing, but I'm going to steal it. We're currently in the Rheology Studios.
In sunny Burbank, California.
And I wish everyone could see the setting we're actually in.
Well, they will. They have it. We just took a picture.
That's true. But it's not distracting, but I am very distracted. And maybe I'm captivated by all of Scott's toys.
There's so many eyes looking at me.
Yeah, there's so many faces.
There's literally like 100
Funko Pop figures.
Funko Pop eyeballs looking at me, which is cool.
Yeah.
Very cultured, Scott, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Do you add them? Are there new ones since the last time I've been here? I feel like there's been new faces.
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy. I don't think I've seen those before.
No, they were here.
How about
I have a new desk, number one. You guys noticed that?
Maybe that's what it is.
It's a little new L shape and a little. And I got like a little LED light that goes underneath here.
Fancy boy.
Gaming office gaming desk. I will, point your attention down to the floor of the Three Stooges dolls that I have. These dolls, a funny little joke is they're made by Spumco. You guys know Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy was like produced by Spumco, which is a goofy little production company. And Spumco, yeah, that's a name. Yeah. And the guy who created Ren and Stimpy, his name's John Kricfalusi. And John Kricfalusi then had his studio like do caricatures of the Three Stooges, and then he made them into dolls. And I collect them, obviously. Yeah. But the funny thing is, my kids have been scared to death.
I was about to say dolls. Those should be buried.
Yeah,
because they're
no, don't bury them. They'll wake up and get out.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is like I would go put them in my kids' beds before they go to bed at night.
Yeah,
and,
that's awesome.
That kind of like boomeranged on me because then they would be up all night long and want to sleep with us. So.
Your own doing.
Little fun thing there. Don't put scary things in your kids' beds right before they go to bed. Dumb idea. Really dumb idea.
Speaking of dumb ideas, let's talk about Christians. Let's try to segue back into that.
That was really good.
There's a lot to say there.
All right, so I have a question, right? We're going to talk about like hypocrites, Christians being hypocrites.
Yeah.
But I had this thought. Because I think there was a time where like culture expected the best out of Christians, and Christians were like telling culture that we are the best of like morality and like ethics and stuff like that, right? This is probably like 50 years ago. But now I'm curious, how would you say that like are people shocked anymore when like there are pastor scandals or church scandals? Like would you say that this is now a bug or feature within the church? And are people thinking this is a bug or feature? Because I think that before it would be like, oh, they're being hypocritical. But now I feel like a lot of people, mostly younger people, would
come to expect it.
Yeah, almost. Just like, no, it's not. Yeah, yes, this is what Christians do. So it's less almost hypocritical. I mean, still, right, there's still, everyone knows, not everyone, but a lot of people know that Christianity is supposed to be about loving. Right. But then there's always that saying of like, there's no hate like Christian love. Right. So that's like a big thing around the internet and memes. So I'm just curious, would you guys, in your experience, do you think a lot of people still expect Christians to, I don't know what I'm saying. Like, is it do they see it as hypocritical, or is this expectation? It's a feature of Christianity.
Yeah, I think it's beyond hypocritical. I think people's feelings would be like, well, yeah, of course it happens. I think there's like apathy now. There's no like, how could they do that? You know?
Yeah, they're supposed to be the best of us.
Yeah. Yeah. There are representatives. No, it's like, yeah, and like move on, that's not a surprise.
Yeah, I think there'd probably be a gambit of, responses. I definitely don't think people are surprised anymore. I think that's the shock value's gone.
Right.
And it's almost like in some people's minds, it's like a kind of just waiting for it to happen.
Right.
But I also believe that there are definite people who just look at Christianity and they don't believe in Christianity because they throw everybody under the bus of like, they're all hypocrites.
Right.
Every Christian I come to find out is a hypocrite.
Yeah.
They say one thing and eventually in dealing with them, they do something else. And so, like my daughters kind of teeter on that a little bit, not to the extreme, but like when they went through high school, there were Christian kids right? And then come to find out they were the biggest partiers in school. And my kids would be like, the so-called Christians. So I don't really know if they met too many like, loving Christians.
Right.
And if they did, the loving Christians are kind of, it's funny. That's like the hypocritical Christians are like the ones that are like in your face.
Yes.
And the loving Christians are the ones that are like hidden in the church somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, there isn't really a blend anywhere.
Well, okay. Do you guys I wonder if you guys run into this problem. Like when I get my hair cut, people ask me what I do.
Where do you get your hair cut, Chris?
No, I hate this.
Oh, I actually have
Supercuts? Do you go supercuts?
Not anymore.
What's wrong with supercuts?
I get my hair cut at 3 different spots. I have like random times of the day where I have like an opening, and then I check the availability in those places. But it's they're more expensive.
Okay.
Just
why don't you come here? I'd cut that hair for free, buddy.
I'm sure you can cut this hair for free, but I'd rather pay someone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So do you how freely do you say, "Oh, I'm a Christian," to people that you don't know?
Not.
Right?
Not freely.
I can't. I almost
they have to like give me something that makes me feel like, oh, I can say this out loud.
Well, an easy out is if they ask what you do, then obviously
I don't even say.
So I have to preface.
Really?
I say I work at UNC Charlotte.
Oh, you don't even say a Christian ministry?
I work with student orgs at UNC Charlotte, and if they ask more questions, they're like, oh, actually,
then you kind of
do
deeper.
This. But if they don't ask me more questions, then
but do you? I don't have to get into it. Yeah,
right,
because like when I try to say, hey, I work for like a Christian ministry at UNC Charlotte, but let me explain more.
But it's not what you think.
Yes, I literally say it's not what you think.
Yeah,
because it's less about like trying to, stay away from toxic Christianity. I'm trying to help students not be toxic Christians anymore, which basically down to hypocritical Christians.
Yeah.
I'm trying to teach Christians not to be hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the job card anymore.
Right.
So, the only time, honestly, that it comes up for me, seriously, honestly, is when people, I may mention like this, the podcast, and they want to know, oh, cool, what's it about? And I'm like, oh gosh,
you had to ask. But I did let you in on the conversation.
I tried to give you a warning here.
Because now if they're Christians, they might be more offended by the podcast.
They're typically not Christians.
Okay, right.
They're typically not. And so it's like, well, it's about theology. And they're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then I have to try to explain it even more. But I typically don't have scenarios where I feel like that's a response unless it's like real blatant. Like the dude that like bumped into us like 2 weeks ago.
That's right, at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And when they kind of preface it, then of course,
right.
But typically no. Like at the hair salon. Well, first of all, I've been going to the same person for years. But
where's that at? You know, put a plug in
right down here. It's called Sabina Spa.
Ooh, you go to a spa?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can tell.
And now you know why I turned my nose up at Supercuts. I mean, come on.
Wow.
Amy Jordan, she's down there.
Amy, shout out Amy
in Indian land. I'm not getting paid for this. But she already knows, and she's a Christian, and we talk about certain things like that. But I don't really have like I do have like non-Christian people that come to my life regularly, but we typically never even go down that
Right.
road. So,
Sure.
But it's interesting.
Hypocritical.
I definitely do. And I'll say this again. I definitely do believe that there are a lot of people in this world that they wouldn't say Jesus is a hypocrite,
Yes.
but they would say Christians.
Yeah.
And now when I say Christians, I'm imagining that in their mind, it's 21st century religion
Right.
is hypocritical, and maybe not necessarily, well, I don't know if they even get to like what disciple is and all that kind of stuff.
No.
It's just people who go to church basically. And we'll get to that. We talked about hypocrisy and hypocrites a couple of episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember me talking about where the word hypocrite comes from? Tyler actually made a verbal note about this. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
You don't remember what that
no,
means?
I have
Shaking
no
your
idea.
head.
I
Yes,
have no
the
idea
whole
what you're
time.
talking
You said
about.
no. I
No
don't.
doubt.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's right with me. No. You don't remember what hypocrite, where the word hypocrite comes from?
No.
Okay.
Is this podcast? I think you're.
It was,
Come on,
it was
another
your
one.
other one with the other Tyler.
Right. Yeah. Your doppelganger. He was here. No, it was you.
Remind me.
Well, hypocrite, or the word is hupakertes. It's a Greek word, and it
Doesn't ring a
literally-
bell.
Okay, it literally means an actor, a stage actor.
Oh,
Now you
okay.
remember that now.
No,
No, you don't.
that's interesting.
That's exactly what
that's
you
my-
said the last time. Yeah. So basically, whenever Jesus uses the word hypocrites, and we've got a couple different scenarios here where, like in Matthew 6, he says, "Don't be like the hypocrites." Matthew 23, he says, he has a whole chapter of woe, and it's woe to the hypocrites, woe to the hypocrites. This is where he talks about you brood of vipers, you snakes, kind of a deal. And he's primarily aiming at the religious leaders.
This is the Sermon on the Mount.
No.
No.
Well, this is
Well,
It's like
Matthew
the-
6 is the Sermon on the Mount. Yes.
Look at the 7 woes, though, right? Is that what you're talking about? The woes?
Yeah, the Matthew 28 or
Okay.
23
Yeah.
is all the woes.
Okay.
So, but yes, Matthew 6 is the Sermon on the Mount, and he's basically telling everybody, like, the idea is like which translates into today, your idea of religion, or your idea of people who are supposed to follow God has been modeled as that, right? These religious leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, even the rabbis, and even the priests, the high priests and the other priests. That's what you've been modeled. That's what's been modeled to you as like what it means to follow God. And then he not only says, don't be like them, but then he calls them hypocrites. He calls them play actors.
Right? Because before this, first of all, and
Mm-hmm.
Matthew 23, like, Jesus goes hard in the paint. It's a great chapter of Jesus calling people out.
Yes.
People need to read that more often. But I don't think I ever, maybe because we're just talking about it so in depth right now, but like, right, when he was using the word hypocrites, but it's not the word we use today. It's literally like they're actors. And he literally pointed at them saying like, hey, they're acting out this fake scenario.
Right.
So there was no like hypocrite was like a job description and not like a description of someone doing an action, right?
now.
Is that true?
Yeah,
or do you
it's
know?
like it's basically the premise of it is an actor getting into character. That's the actual.
So when he
premise.
was using the word hypocrites, he was just calling them actors, like character actors.
Yeah, they're playing a character.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
That's
they're
cool.
getting into
and then,
character.
And now we use that as like to point out people who are not living
right
out what they really believe.
Yeah,
or
they're one person acting like they're somebody
Yes,
else,
yes.
which is
Yes.
true. But
Yeah. Okay.
he would literally, so like this there were actors, or there were stage acting and that kind of stuff, and so he's not kind of like throwing out an idiom. He's not really throwing out like a phrase of the day or anything like that. He's actually calling them
you influencers,
right?
You social media influencers. Right.
You know, the funny thing is, I tell the girls all the time, I'm like going, how, you know, we looked up to celebrities, and primarily the celebrities we look up to are actors. How can we trust an actor?
Are you asking us? What are you asking us? How
can you trust? How can you trust them? They pretend to be somebody else all the time.
You can't.
Because in my head, when you asked me that, I was like, I really want to trust actors.
Yeah.
Like, how should I trust the actors that I look up to?
How can you trust them more? Just a funny little thing to think about. Yeah. Because it's kind of true. They're very, very good at acting as somebody else.
That's why child actors, right? They don't end up very well.
Oh, jeez.
Right? Because like I think they're doing whatever. Not
they get mixed
acting.
up.
Yeah, they get mixed up because like I'm just
their identity.
Like Harry Potter's
their identity is in.
They don't know how to differentate.
Yes.
Their job title versus their identity.
Harry Potter kids. I'm pointing at all the Funko Pops. For 10 years, they were playing a part.
Right.
From what, like 11 to 20.
Sure. Yeah.
But so like, there's no way that what's his name? I don't know what Ronald Weasley's name is. His real whatever.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That is the problem right there. You don't know his actual name.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I feel like
Rupert Grint.
Yeah. He would probably took so much. I don't know if this is true or not, but he probably had to take so much of that character onto himself as he developed in his like during puberty.
Are they all like messed up?
No, they're actually doing pretty well.
Okay.
Well, they're doing really well as far as financially.
Yeah, I don't know.
They have to act over again, but
I don't know how they're doing.
I'll give you another one here.
Personally, don't know them personally and how they're doing.
Not yet. I'm
call him up afterwards and see what he's listening. What am I talking about? He'll call us up.
That's true.
I will say this, like for acting, sometimes like when Heath Ledger when Heath Ledger took on the role for the Batman trilogy. He actually talked to Jack Nicholson, who did the Joker for Tim Burton, and Jack Nicholson told him, he said, you need to make sure you're well grounded in who you actually are, because when you start to go down the road of playing the Joker, there's a serious temptation to like become this character.
No way.
Yeah. Actually, the girls tell me we're getting off on a crazy tangent here, but
let's go for it. I don't care. Let's do this.
Okay, so the young actor who played Elvis in the new Elvis movie that was
Austin Butler, with his accent. Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen Dune 2 yet? We don't. No. I get into Shai Hulud.
Wow. You called me a nerd a while ago?
I'm not saying you're the only nerd in the room.
Okay, here we go.
Chris is definitely a nerd.
I believe in Arrakis.
But yeah, so like he got so into this character that all of a sudden he can't get out.
His voice, so I'm talking to Tyler now.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
You can see clips of him before he played Elvis, and his voice changed after he played Elvis. Like months after he played Elvis, he still had an Elvis voice.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and he had to get a new voice actor to unlearn the Elvis, the coach,
really?
to unlearn
the he hosted SNL, and he sounded like his
Elvis?
character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
You should.
It's a real thing.
And
interesting.
And his character, whatever. I'm not going to get into
it. Let's do it.
His character in Dune, you can also.
Oh, don't talk about Dune.
Okay. Well, no. His character in Dune, his voice is Stellan Skarsgård's voice, the Baron's voice. He's a really good voice actor. Doesn't matter. Let's not talk about it.
We can't talk about it.
But what we're trying to say is this: is that like sometimes, and this is kind of a deeper deal. Like you know, it's like you are what you eat kind of a deal. If you play the same character for a long enough period of time, you start to kind of slip into your identity gets lost, and you really think you are that character. I think that's kind of what Jesus is really kind of like actually talking about more than anything, is that they have become somebody else. And not only they have become somebody else, but they've turned the roles that they play into something else as well.
Yeah.
And they're not what God had intended. Jesus, I just wrote this down. The Jesus type of hypocrite is one who acts the part of a believer / follower of God, but they don't have the fruit to back it up. And the fruit that we see in Galatians 5:22 and 23, that is the byproduct of being close to God, right? Those things, those fruits of the Spirit, those things are the byproducts. Those are the results that should come out of someone's life if they truly are in close proximity to God. And obviously, those religious leaders of the day were not. So I think, the trouble is if what we're saying is true about what they say, is if all Christians then get thrown under the bus of hypocrisy, similarly to the New Testament religious leaders of Jesus's day, as like they were, is that fair? Because the three of us sit here and we know that that's not fair, because, I don't want to be called a hypocrite just because I make a mistake.
Right.
Is it fair? Two things to consider. This is just what I kind of jotted down.
Okay.
Two things to consider. And I think it will help anybody who's kind of saying this and actually thinking this. I have a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, his daughter completely thinks this. Totally thinks that it's a sham. It's all, not that Jesus wasn't a real guy, but that all of that is a huge, huge sham. First thing, consider what, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, Christians are being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they, quote unquote? And can they be pointed back to as someone who has these fruit? Mm-hmm. That would be number one.
Yeah. Think
about that. And the other thing to think about, and we talked about this before too, in the whole little mini series we've done in this series of like, what is a Christian, is, people who are religious, they self-label like all the time Christian. And we know, because we've talked about it, that they don't really completely understand what that term means either.
Yep.
So they label themselves that. And we just kind of talked about it before we went on to record here, that there's a whole category of people who just don't know. They don't get it because they've lived their whole world inside a institution or religious world. And that makes them Christian. What are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I'll defer.
I defer to the senator from.
It's hard for me to record my thoughts because I'm such an external processor. So it might take a while before I get to the point I'm trying to get, and I don't know if I believe it. So
That's okay. We can edit. No problem.
I think. Right. But your first question was, is it fair? Is it fair?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, there's 2 point of views though, right? Is it fair for the Christian to be labeled that way? And is it fair for, or whatever, like is it the non-Christian looking at it saying, is it fair for them to say that? Or is it the Christian who's saying, is it fair for it to be labeled that, right?
Yeah.
And I think both parties is like a misunderstanding of what's happening, of what Christianity is as presented to them, for both the Christian and the non-Christian.
Sure. Right.
Right. Because I think for the non-Christian, it is, as an outsider looking in, Christianity is about converting to this lifestyle that is all about practicing righteousness, quote unquote, or morality. You have to, like, honestly, today it is synonymous with, like, you have to have a certain opinion on abortion, LGBTQ community, global warming, Republican. So like that is part of the package of Christianity. And then as a Christian, like, I think a lot of people, the people that they can produce fruits of the Spirit, right? But I'm thinking of people who have, like, you're talking about earlier, like, they take on this role that they're supposed to be playing, but that role is usually misunderstanding of what the gospel is, right? It's more about how you have to produce righteousness because that's what God demands of you.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
So then you get, so I'm thinking of, I don't want to use names, but there's this guy who used to be part of our ministry. He's probably not listening. But he's no longer a Christian. And I remember when he entered our ministry, he was this new Christian, and he was super hot for God.
Hot for God.
Whatever. He was very zealous, right? And he was always doing all these things and activities, trying to, like, evangelize. He was like, quote unquote, on fire. But but he's not a Christian anymore because I think no one clearly he was part of a Christian institution that applauded Christian activities within the institution.
Right.
And like you only did Christian activities. It's only counted as Christian. We talked about this before. Like it's only Christian acts if you did it through the system, right?
Yeah, official.
Official, right. And I think he got super burnt out. And I think he would be really hard on himself, or the system would be hard on him if he didn't act a certain way. The whole thing was without any grace, right? There was, because what we believe is that, right, we were talking about this off mic before about how sin works. Like God's not blaming you for your sin. God's not blaming you for your mistakes, but we oftentimes blame ourselves or blame each other for the sin that we're producing. When you're saying you're a new creation, we can get into this. This is like
this
rarely
is coming up in episode 10, but yes.
But it's the idea that like he did not understand the concept of like what was his actual identity after the gospel.
Right, yeah.
Right. And I think he was playing something different than what Jesus was offering. Right. And so he played that role so much, it was so heavy on him that he said, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to keep feeling like a bad Christian all the time. So he walked away because he didn't want to feel like a hypocrite. Because he said, I can't do the things that God's demanding me to do. So I'd rather just not be a hypocrite and then walk away from the whole thing. Right. And so I think I lost my thought. But I think a lot of people, like the Christian, don't understand like the role you're playing is not the role that God's asking you to play. But they're so into that role that they put in their head, or other people put in their head, and it's clearly not fulfilling.
And it's the entire lens of how they see everything work. So you read scripture through the lens of that role, the incorrect role, for using like the actor analogy.
Yeah. Because in reality, like what God has actually done to our hearts, like we don't have to try to play a Christian. Right. I think so many times we try to play a Christian when God is just like, no, you have a new nature. I trust you with that nature. Be free in that. I trust that you should be free. You shouldn't be trying to do the Christian choice. So some people try to do the Christian thing all the time. Right. And they feel like that's against what they want to do. But God is saying, like, I've given you a new nature. My spirit dwells in you. My spirit can't dwell in places that have sin. I've cleared out all the sin against you. So my spirit can dwell in you. You're now, right, the ecclesia, right? You are now like the new temple. And now I trust that what you want to do is of God, right? And I think people are saying like, I can't trust myself. I have to do the Christian thing. And usually the Christian thing is not what God is asking you to do, even though that might sound weird, right?
Yeah.
And so I think people get confused and saying like, well, I want to do what I thought I was supposed to do. Like there's another student who is like who came to us and they were asking like, hey, I don't know how like evolution works in my class. I don't know how like they had so many doubts, right? And I think Tyler and I were helping this person say, I don't think that's the devil putting doubts in your head. I think that's God saying, I think you are elevating the wrong things about your faith, right? I think you're putting too much pressure on yourself to try to figure out the mysteries of God when God's not asking you to do that.
Yeah.
So, but then they think they're a bad Christian if they have doubts.
Because they feel like a hypocrite.
Yeah, they feel like a hypocrite because they're playing this role that God's not asking them to play.
Right.
I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense because I think and we're gonna kind of touch on this in the next episode, but I think it makes perfect sense because it's almost as if like you become a Christian and now you need to go out and do a lot of things.
Yes.
And that's not what this relationship is about.
Yes.
It's as we've said together for the last several years, the whole horse and cart mentality, right? Not horse and horse mentality. I don't become a horse and he's a horse and we're going to gallop together and we're going to go storm the gates of hell and all that kind of jazz. And when there is, yes, a whole long list of things that Christians do that we have debunked, episodes before this. And the one thing that Christians actually are supposed to do organically, as we were saying about the fruit of the Spirit stuff, is love. Love should be like the ultimate byproduct.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a verb or an action. Let's put it that way. It's not necessarily an action I got to go out and love. I got to go do love. You have to be love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As if you can stop
Right.
being the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess what? I
yeah.
can't go today because I have to go love somebody between 2:15 and
exactly.
2:45. And, but I want to get back. I'll be done with that. And it's all about becoming something. And
it's the entire, like, all the fruits of the Spirit
yes.
It's
the byproduct
right.
of
It's
being
not action.
something
It's not
different.
like, I gotta go be patient now.
Right.
Like, do patience.
Right. And
self-control.
And that
That's
is
funny.
honestly like the recipe for disaster. It is the recipe for like what seemingly hypocrisy. Right.
Yes.
Because once we focus on the action of love, like we can take our love hat on and off.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when
yeah,
we
yeah,
start
yeah.
doing things that God's not asking us to do.
Right.
Yes.
And then when we feel like that's not fulfilling, we're going to try even harder. And then that's when we really we screw up enough.
Yeah.
And non-Christian sees us and like, that's not love.
Yeah.
That's not who Jesus is.
Right.
You're
right.
a hypocrite. So in my head, it's less about non-Christians calling Christians hypocrites. It's more about Christians realizing that they're not hypocrites if you're living by the Spirit.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely both because we have two different, we have two different parties involved and they come together, so it has to be both. But yes, I think hypocrisy comes about primarily because of false ideas, right? I have a false idea of what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to be, or whatever. Like, how many times has love been like things being done in the name of love, where people, like you just said, people go, it doesn't feel like love.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel loving. Well, we're rebuking you in love.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're just rebuking me because you get off on it and you think it's wonderful that I get to go now and like point the finger at somebody because I'm good now and you're not. This is something we've said too for a long time, is like the whole, like, how did all of a sudden things turn into an us versus them kind of mentality? Because I really feel like this is kind of probably where some of the waters got muddied.
Sure.
And where this whole like blame game can kind of go back and forth about hypocrisy, where we're like onward Christian soldiers marching as to war kind of a deal.
But they take verses like, the world will hate you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I out of love for,
you're doing something right because the world hates you.
Yes, that's how I know I'm loving well.
Right. And they forget about the second part of that, which says they will hate you because of me.
Yes.
And it was probably just a quick message to just those people right there for that time, and not only
Correct.
for us. But
Yeah.
Hey, that's beside the point. But
I think that is the point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think we know that if we can say Christianity in air quotes again, as far as like the 21st century religious view Christianity has definitely been one that doesn't seem loving, doesn't seem accepting, is judgmental, is angry,
Yeah.
is highly political,
Very loud.
yeah.
very loud, and quite honestly, like the opposite of the fruit of the Spirit kind of thing. And really,
Yes.
Yeah.
and so it's like, Chris, what you said from the very beginning. Is it surprising anymore? And I would say no. I wanted to say this too. This is from John 13, and this is kind of a big deal that Jesus says. He says in John 13, 34 and 35, he says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must now love one another. by this, here's the big deal. Everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So what Jesus is actually doing here is he's actually putting in a new commandment. It's not a commandment to love or a commandment to, as in the 10 Commandments, love God.
Right.
Love others as yourself. Jesus is now saying, no. Here's a new commandment. I want you to love other people as I have loved you. And you think to yourself, okay, well, how has he loved us? Well, it's very simple. If you just go backwards and look at the about 5 verses before that, this whole story is about Jesus washing his disciples' feet. And the end of it, he's basically saying, here's the moral of the story. Here's why I've done all this. And Peter goes, oh, you're not washing my feet. No way. No, I'm going to wash your feet. And here's why. Because I'm now giving you a new commandment, not just loving God and not just loving others as yourself, because you may not love yourself very much. So therefore you may not love other people very well. I want you to love others as I have loved you, like just now, what I just did. And I, to me, that is like where the waters have gotten muddied. Somehow we've gone from being a completely unconditional, self-sacrificing people after the Messiah to a spoiled, hateful, and entitled group of religious people. And you should be shocked if people don't call them hypocrites.
If a non-Christian has like a positive
right.
perspective on
I mean, because if we're here teaching
zag?
and then we see something the opposite and we don't say something about it, then we've got a real problem.
Yeah.
But nature is just kind of doing its thing.
How in the world, everything you said was so true, but how in the world is Christianity the largest religion on the planet?
Well,
How did that happen?
So I did a podcast and a video, I believe, back about a year or two ago. Anyway, and it was all about God being for us, right? Do you remember that? Did you guys see that? God being for us, and so like after Constantine did what he did and organized everything, and now everything is like, it's not really a God kingdom movement. Now it's a Roman kingdom movement.
Jeez Louise, Scott. You did it there.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden we're a new people. We're a different people. We have a different king. And so we don't have King Jesus anymore. We now have a new religion where our king is humanity.
Right.
And so there's a reason why we've become entitled, because.
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are you saying the God for us is not
that God is not that God is pro humans?
Yes.
Because that's what we could, because God is pro humans. He is for us.
Yes.
But that God works for us, right? Like Aladdin in the lamp, right?
Yeah,
I can rub the lamp. And God comes up and grants my wishes. I mean, even Constantine himself, before he went into war to defeat the
He's for us in this battle, right?
Yeah, he said he had a vision where Jesus told him, "Hey, if you'll paint crosses on your armor and your shield and stuff, this is yours."
If God be for us.
This might be too real, but there is a sermon campaign that most churches use called God for Us. God is for us. I see it all the time. It's always my ick meter, or this wait. I understand what you're saying.
Yucky.
Like God is for humanity, right? He died for us. But that phrase, right? It's always been, there's something off. And I think it is this idea, God wants what, right? It's if you do this, well, he'll do it for you if you do this for him, almost, right? Is it
Yeah. It's almost it's almost like, so God wants the best for us. The problem is that it's typically not what we think as the best.
Right.
So it's a change it's a paradigm shift in how you see things. We're supposed to now see things how God sees things. So therefore, then we can understand the Beatitudes. Who's living the best life?
Right.
These people are in God's eyes. But so the shift isn't on like what we're gonna shift our eyes to how God sees things. We're gonna shift our eyes to how we're gonna shift God's eyes to see how we see things.
Yeah. And he's for us.
And so like the Crusades, all throughout this whole thing is literally we hold up the banner, and it's literally like Moses holding his hands up and his staff up, and hey, we're winning, and I'm getting tired.
Yeah, that phrase.
If he's for us, who could be against us?
No, hold him back up every time. Yeah. So if we do certain types of things, then God is going to be.
Yes.
He's going to be the secret weapon.
Yes.
I don't know if I should say this, but I feel like that phrase is always used to just grow church.
Probably.
Right, like
because you're doing the right things, then God.
Right, hey, congregation, God is for us. Let's do this. Right?
Yeah.
God wants this church to grow, and we're
God
doing the right
God
thing.
is on our side, and the reality is like I quoted like Abraham Lincoln.
It puts the church in the middle of it.
Right.
It replaces Jesus.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
That's what you're talking about.
Yes, totally. Abraham Lincoln was asked during the Civil War. They said, "Don't you think it's important? Do you think God is on our side, the side of the North?"
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And he said, "I think a better question is to figure out if we're on God's side."
Mm-hmm.
And that is really the key.
Yeah.
It's really the key. It's like, are we going to see things through our own eyes, or are we going to see things through God's eyes? Because when we see things through our own eyes, we're asking God to join us.
Yes.
But God is asking the opposite.
Yeah.
He's wanting us to come and join him and see things through his eyes. And as we talked about, like the whole idea of holy, that's a seriously key piece of the puzzle. Understanding that holy doesn't mean like perfect or blameless or spotless. It means unique.
Mm-hmm.
God absolutely is unique from all the other gods. All the other gods want people to sacrifice, sacrifice human beings, do weird and crazy stuff. And God is unique because he wants your heart. He wants your desires to be full of his desires. And so when that doesn't happen, there's a serious disconnect.
And
there's no doubt.
So going back to the hypocrisy and trying to like act a certain way when we think God is like for us. Somehow this is wrapped into this thing now.
Yeah, here we are.
Right? Like we believe our role is to do these things in order for God to work through us, right? Like holding up our arms or doing the like God wants us to do certain acts in order for him to work through us.
Yeah.
And he'll only work through us if we do these like Christian acts.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where the hypocrisy works. And like, I'm supposed to do these things. But then like it really leaves
no
you
matter how
inside.
mad it makes you.
Yes.
Exactly.
This is
what God wants.
That's what God
almost
wants.
right. It's like it's not like you enjoy it. It's like I have to do it.
Correct.
It's what God is asking
It's
me
an
to
obligation.
do. Right. So like it's almost want to empathize with the
hypocrites.
Even though they right.
Yeah.
Even though like sure, I'm not like excusing the atrocities that like Christians have done in the name of God, right? But
No
it's
doubt.
like they're so misguided to think they're supposed to do these things, even though they probably knew like they would never say it out loud. Like, I don't think this is what I want to do, but I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yes. In their mind, they've made it right.
And when everything else in your life is that, I know I don't want to do it, but I have to do it, then it's an easy thing to switch on in your head. Like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it then. Because I still have to do stuff in my life that I don't want to do. Surely God is like that. Surely Christianity is like that.
Yeah, it's all about
easy.
calling, right? It's like, I'm called to go and do this. And, that's a real dangerous spot to be in because it's almost like people who are predicting the end of the world. It's like when it doesn't happen. No, I meant next month, or next year. And it's the same kind of deal. Because ultimately for those who are in that mentality, hopefully they can listen to more podcasts like this and understand that God is really asking for something very, a pretty simple concept, which is, he's He's looking for your whole life to be his, not the other way around. In closing, I want to say this to anybody who is actually thinking that the whole world is full of all Christians are hypocrites. Please listen to the next episode, because we're going to talk about sin. And if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to sin. You shouldn't sin. We're going to kind of debunk that. But just know this. If you've listened to any of the other stuff we've talked about, we've gone very, very clearly through what a Christian is. And the whole idea of the word Christian alludes to someone who is all about the Christ, the Messiah. And that really is what God is looking for. And honestly, you can't really call yourself a Christian unless that is really true of you, unless you are really all about the Christ, the Messiah, and not just your version of it, because that's easy to do. We just talked about it, but really what Jesus talked about. So just do us a favor. Don't mistake Christian for churchgoer.